As a renovation and remodeling contractor, I firmly believe one of the most difficult aspects of our job, there's a lot of difficult aspects, developing, establishing, and maintaining a schedule. And again, maintaining does not necessarily mean finishing that job on schedule as much as just managing that schedule throughout the course of the project. I'm going to give you guys a little insight as to how I do that. What's up, everyone? I'm getting right to it today. When Doug sees this, he's going to be surprised because normally I turn this recording on. I sit here for a couple of seconds and I collect myself and I think about what I'm going to say and how I'm going to start this conversation. Because if you haven't recorded a podcast, you don't understand that it's very awkward to just begin speaking to a camera about what you're going to speak about. I turn the camera on and I sit there and I'm like, how am I going to start? How am I going to start this? Am I going to say, hey, what's up, guys? How's it going? Another midweek modern craftsman. You just don't know what to say. So normally I sit there for a couple of minutes and I think about what I'm going to say. And then I change that. And then I end up just winging it anyway. But today I got right to it. I turned record on and I started spitting to the camera, and Doug's going to be impressed. He's going to have a few less seconds to edit out here in the beginning of this podcast. Excuse me. I just had breakfast. It's early. Um, I have my old school Phillies corduroy hat on. I am not happy this morning. It's Tuesday morning. The Phillies played against the Braves last night, game 2. Normally, with what's going on, I would be very pleased coming home from Atlanta with a 1-1 series, a best of 5 series coming back to Philadelphia. It's the same as last year, but yesterday we were up 4-0. Um, I think we stranded 9 to 10 runners on base. Ended up losing 5-4 at the end of the game. Even in the top of the ninth, Bryce Harper got doubled up, which I do not blame him. He was trying to make something happen. Castellanos hit a ball deep to center field, and their outfielder, I think his name's Michael Harris, made a great catch and then doubled him up. But it's just a game that we should not have lost. Wheeler pitched a gem of a game, made one bad pitch, and the bullpen didn't do its job. And the pitching was fine, honestly. The offense really, they didn't score the runs that they should have scored. They left a lot of runners on base. They didn't capitalize. 4 runs is great for most teams with good pitching, but the Braves can score runs, and they did late. And to give up a 4-run lead and lose that game, I'm fine coming home. Like I said, I would have been fine with a 1-1 coming home if it didn't happen the way that it happened. So I was pissed last night. Um, Rachel basically left me be. I was not happy. I didn't sleep well. I woke up in a bad mood. Just, uh, I hope the players are doing much better than I am, but I was pissed. I still am pissed. I try not to think about it. I was laying in bed and I was just fuming about what happened. It just a bummer of a game to lose. So actually, I don't want to think about it anymore. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I hope that they come home and they use the home field advantage to get moving and start over and put that loss behind them. But bad baseball, missed opportunities, errors, 2 errors that Trey Turner made that cost us a couple runs. A game that should never have been lost to the Braves and the way that it did. And also the announcer just not definitely played for the Braves and Braves fan. And it was a very one-sided conversation and description and narration of that game. So I'm glad to have that behind us. I would rather be coming home 2-0 with 2 games in Philly to get to the next round, but it's not going to happen. It's 1-1. Hopefully we can get these 2 knocked out before having to go back to Atlanta for a game 5. Pissed. I'm so pissed. But let's get to to the podcast rather than me just stewing in my own poop right now. This week, the podcast blog post midweek is on how I establish and maintain a schedule for my projects. And maintain a schedule is not necessarily remaining on schedule, but how I maintain what that schedule looks like throughout the course of a project. As a renovation and remodeling contractor, I firmly believe one of the most difficult aspects of our job, there's a lot of difficult aspects, and this goes hand in hand with pricing because your pricing is based on a schedule and values of how much time you'll be spending on the job with regard to line items and task and trades. Is developing, establishing, and maintaining a schedule. And again, maintaining does not necessarily mean finishing that job on schedule as much as just managing that schedule throughout the course of the project. So I'm gonna give you guys a little insight as to how I do that. Um, some specifics, but also a little bit of communication and what goes into that there. So, uh, as I mentioned last week, it's really like communication is super, super important. You need to have the conversation with your customers or whoever's involved as to how the schedule looks. Are we on schedule? Are we behind schedule? And what do we do about that? When we create a budget, when we create a schedule, when we price a job, when we enter into a contract for a job, especially as renovation contractors, it's made up of assumptions and what I call wags and swags. That's not my term. If you don't know that term, I learned that term in college. Not a huge advocate for college, but I did learn that term. So maybe go just to learn terms like that. But wags and swags, if you're unfamiliar with the term, wags is wild ass guesses, and swags are scientific wild ass guesses. Um, that's our industry. That's how we enter into contracts. That's how we price jobs. That's how we develop schedules. It's based on assumptions. It's based on what we think the weather may be, efficiencies, how subs will overlap, when we'll be able to get subs to jobs, how inspections will go, what days we can get inspections. It's just made up. It's 100% made up. If you create a schedule and your job finishes on schedule, you either lucked out, right? If assuming if you were to able to maintain your schedule with, hey, these are where these trades are coming in. This is the day they're going to start. This is the day they're going to end. This is where we're overlapping trades. This is when we're inspections. If you have a job and you maintain that schedule the way that you intended, you lucked out. There's no way to accurately assess everything that's going to happen and maintain schedule. You either lucked out or you have a contract that affords you an opportunity to dump whatever sort of manpower you have in place to finish a job on schedule. I would just rather not sell a job based on schedule. And I understand the contractual and legal implications of a start date and an end date and what that means to customers. But you need to have clauses within your contract and communication within your contract, verbiage, I think, within your contract that affords you an opportunity to um, address that schedule on a certain, maybe it's biweekly, like I invoice biweekly, so I like to assess my schedule and alter that schedule biweekly. And also, if if maintaining schedule and closing a job out on your contracted date is that critical to you, you need to have pricing and systems set up and go into that project with the communication with the customers that, hey, if this is your biggest priority, we need to put money aside in this budget to make that happen because things aren't going to go to plan. Things are going to change. You're going to have inefficiencies. There's going to be slowdowns. There's going to be weather. Subs are going to get sick. You're going to get sick. There's going to be stuff that comes up with your family that create hiccups within that schedule. And if your biggest consideration and your biggest constraint and your biggest item within your program is finishing that job and closing that job out on schedule, you need to put money aside to be able to bring in manpower, pay subs more money, adjust accordingly to be able to close that job out on time. That being said, when I enter into a pre-construction agreement, I start developing my schedule. So the first thing I do is I take my spreadsheet, and it's somewhat at the same time I develop a highly detailed scope of work along with a my line item proposal, right? So I'm going through my um spreadsheet template, and I am putting cost and values and times to each task within that line item. I'm also meshing and dovetailing that with my detailed scope of work. So I'm not necessarily sitting down and writing out an entire detailed scope of work or doing this entire line item budget independently of each other. It's give and take, and I'm creating and establishing them both at the same time to ensure that I don't miss anything. If I'm going through my spreadsheet and something comes up that I missed in my, um, excuse me, I'm a little bit, I feel like I have a little bit of a cold. Give me one sec. Um, in my scope of work, I'm addressing the scope of work. If I'm going through my scope of work and I realize I left something out of my spreadsheet, I'm going and addressing my spreadsheet. So they're working hand in hand, and I'm not creating them independently of each other, but somewhat at the same time. So one's feeding off the other, and then they're aligning and they're agreeing with each other. As I do this and as I finalize this, I'm going to start developing a Gantt chart. You can do it on Excel, you can download templates, whatever you need to do, but I start looking at my scope of work. That is how I'm going to build this job in my head on paper, and it is how I am working my way through this project from the day I start the job, and set up site protection till the day that we close the job out and we pull site protection. Um, I'm looking at my scope of work and I'm looking at my spreadsheet and I'm creating this schedule, right? The first thing I'm going to do when I look at both my scope of work and my spreadsheet is this. I'm going to set up site protection. That's going to take X amount of days. I'm going to start on this day. The next thing is going to bring the demo contractor in. I also account for a bit of fluff there, right? Because I'd love to get in that day and get the site protection up and assume that they're going to be able to start the next day, but maybe they don't. So give yourself a little bit of fluff. Build that into your schedule. If it's an extra day or so, give them an extra day on the schedule. Um, how long is it going to take them? They're guessing 5 days. Maybe it takes them six. Maybe it takes them four. Probably going to take them six, right? It's usually never going to happen as quick as you think. So use your schedule of values, use your scope of work, and start building this schedule out. While my demo guys are started on the inside, is there work that can be done on the outside? So this is where this Gantt chart starts to overlap, right? How can you move forward on this project if it's not just you performing the work? How can you move forward on this project and overlap trades that aren't going to bump heads with each other and move towards your end goal? Um, so I start working in different trades that may be able to start at the same time as interior trades and move ahead with the schedule, but don't interfere with them. So I work my way towards rough inspections. That's my first big goal for me. Get everything out, work my way towards rough inspections. I know that I have inspections that I need to account for time, that I need to account for downtime, that there's things that I won't be able to do. There's trades that won't be able to be working. So put some fluff in there for inspections. Are you going to pass inspections first shot? Are you going to be able to get the inspections the day that you want? This is where you don't want to overlap too much. It's great to be able to overlap subs and keep things moving. But if you're overlapping subs and you're creating inefficiencies with those subs, maybe those overlaps within those subcontractors and trades are actually adding onto your schedule at the end of the day. Um, so again, I'm gonna take my spreadsheet. and I'm going to look at the labor and the financial burden attached to all of that. And all of these are best based on my experience, my wags, my swags. I'm leaning on my contractors, right? My floor sub. How long is it going to take you? I think it's going to take me 12 days. Is that tight? Or is 12 days giving you a little bit of time? How long do you need for floors to cure before I can get in there, put down site protection? All of these questions need to be asked when you're developing this. So I look at each sub trade. I look at each sub that I have to bring in. I look at every task that I have to complete, and I assign a value based on how much time it's going to take. I look at things on larger jobs in half days and full days. To get into hours and everything else, I'm just too far into the weeds when I'm looking at a schedule. It's unnecessary. Um, you have to. It's the law of averages. You have to average these trades out. There's days where I go in and it takes me a half a day to trim out a window because I got a phone call, because this happened, because the trim was milled improperly, because the jamb on the window screwed up, because I had to remove a bunch of drywall, because I made a mistake. Then there's days where I can go in and trim an entire room worth of windows because I'm already all set up and I'm moving and I'm in the rhythm and I have everything out and I've learned what I had to screw with. So you're creating laws of averages. Um, to establish this schedule, and your hope is that when you put all of these trades together and you overlap all of these trades, that you've left some fluff, and enough fluff to compensate for the inefficiencies that you didn't compensate for. um the biggest thing for me here is that your customers understand this is all wags and swags. This is all made up. This is all based on perfect days, great weather, that everyone shows up when they're going to, that they don't have a guy or a girl call out sick, that everyone's performing the best that they can. And if they aren't, maybe you're accounting for some of this, but you're putting this schedule together based on assumptions and guesses. Your customers have to understand that. Again, if you have a client where they just need an end date because they have to be back in, and that's what you want to do, and that's your customer base, great. All power to you. But make sure that they understand the financial implication of doing so. I would rather not put the pressure on myself. If a customer has a hard, like contractually and legally, you have to have a start date and an end date. But if that's the most highest priority in a customer's program for me, that's not my customer, because I don't want to be bound to an end date that's a hard stop no matter what. I would rather focus on execution and quality and managing subs and being able to ebb and flow throughout this project to get done what I need to the best of my abilities. Sorry, my watch is dinging right now. So, if that is your customer base and that is who you're selling, make sure that you understand the cost associated with finishing a job on time. If the schedule or the scope of work expands and there's still a hard stop date, there are massive costs associated with performing more work in less time. And if you don't account for them, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. So for me, communication to my customers, with my subs, with my designers, architects, whoever's involved from day one, that this is my schedule. This is a guess. I'm not perfect. The schedule's not perfect. The inspection schedule's not perfect. This is an ideal scenario, and this job may not be an ideal scenario. So I try and capture as much of those inconsistencies and potential issues within my schedule, so I'm not creating a schedule that's day to day and I have no fluff and I have no downtime, and it's a perfect scenario, because then you're really screwing yourself. I like to try and account for downtime and inconsistencies and inefficiencies, um, and a little bit of such, and not quite such a tight overlap on subs. Like to give myself a little breathing room, because typically in a remodel, things are not going according to plan. Um, but it's still there's things that you cannot account for. So what you do now that you have this Gantt chart developed, again, that very simply put is based on your scope of work and your spreadsheet. And it seems overwhelming and it seems like a lot, but it's not. I what I do is I go and I create a Excel spreadsheet and I list every task that has to be done on the job. And this is not necessarily it's not my line item task. It's not filling nail holes, caulking. It's not broken down that much as carpentry, finished carpentry. It's not, per window, how much time. It's bigger than that. It's bigger picture, because to bind myself to those small individual minute tasks is I'm just too far into the weeds at that point. So I look at finished carpentry as a whole, paint and prep as a whole, um, electrical as a whole, appliances as a whole, framing as a whole, exterior work as a whole, and I add up all of these. So I'll list all of these out and I'll put them in the order that I develop my scope of work. So when I go through, the first thing is site protection, and then demolition, and then rough framing, and then layout for all of my subcontractors, and then getting my rough mechanicals in, and then insulation or inspections, and then insulation, fireball, all of that. So I go through, and then next to these, I put the amount of days that each of these is going to take. Then once I have all of these spelled out and in a top to bottom order, in a sequential logical order, I'll start creating the Gantt chart where it'll be 4 days or 2 days for site protection. So I'll put 2 blocks for site protection, starting on this date, ending on this date. My weekends are in there. We don't work weekends. If we need to, again, there's a cost associated with that. You can add that into your job. I don't want to work weekends. So I work through each week, and I take each value for each task and I put them into the schedule. If I can overlap them, I overlap them. My sixth line item, which may be exterior demolition of siding, that may be able to happen at the same time as item one, which is site protection interior, right? Even though that's sixth down on the list, that might be able to start the first day of the job. So even though that's sixth down on my list, that may be able to be on the first day of my Gantt chart that's going to start. So this is where the overlapping comes in. And this is where you start blending tasks that you're doing, tasks that are accounted for and planned for, different sub trades, and what that looks like from a timeline perspective, and where you can fit these into your schedule. This is where the project management comes in. This is where you have to rely on experience and understanding how many people can be on a job site where at once, that they're not losing efficiency, and that you can make forward progress and momentum. So I do this the whole way, right? If there's inspections being done, is there other work that can be done during those inspections? So maybe during that inspection area on my Gantt chart, I have downtime for interior construction, but the roof can be getting done. The siding can be getting replaced. The landscaping can be getting done on other areas of the house. There's so many ways that you can overlap. You just don't want to create a schedule that is based on a perfect scenario, because you'll be shooting yourself in the foot. So I develop this and I go through every single thing and I start layering these and I see where things can fit in. After we get our base cabinet set, we can get our template done. We can still continue to do other work, but there's also stuff that can't be done for 10 days until we get countertops back. Like, we can't set our backsplash tile until then. So I know there's other things that can be done that maybe in my head it's like, all right, after tops is backsplash. That's just the next thing in order. Set my upper cabinets, then I can put the trims on. But maybe at that point I start jumping to paint prep, right? So like, it's out of order sequentially and logically, but in order to keep the job moving, you can put these things in, and you can adapt and be somewhat of a chameleon to keep moving things forward. So that's how I establish my schedule, and I go from the start of the job to the end of the job, and then I look at it and I make sure for every week that I have things overlap where they can be overlapped and spread out where they can't, and that I account for weekends, and I just every date till the end of the job. And that will tell me when my start date is and when my end date is, where my trades are overlapping, at what point I need to start scheduling certain subs, how far out they need me to schedule. And that's how I manage that schedule throughout the project. That schedule, unless I completely lucked out, is not going to be accurate of what the dates may depict as the project progresses. So, me starting drywall on October 10th may actually be October 16th. That's fine. That's okay. As long as everyone understands that's where you stand. Is it October 16th because there's been added scope, or is it October 16th because of inefficiencies? Are there costs associated with that now being October 6th rather than October 10th? That's where the communication comes in. That's where it's having the conversation with the customers. Hey, right now we're 6 days behind schedule. Maybe it's only 4 work days. So let's say, hey, we're roughly a week behind schedule, 1 work week. That's because we ran into this, and this, which were extra costs. So now we're $7,500 over budget and a week behind schedule. Are you okay with absorbing that into your overall budget? So we went from $100,000 to $107,500. Are you okay with that added cost? And then also, are you okay with bumping the schedule a week? I have to say that's a week right now. We progress further in this job, it may be another week that we're behind. So that's a week right now. This is not saying that guaranteed this job is only going to be 1 week over schedule. You know what? We might be able to make that week up by overlapping, or things might go better than anticipated down the road. But as of right now, we're 1 week behind schedule. That's all I can do. That's all I can account for. So having that conversation with architects, designers, customers is really important. Hey, we're over budget. We're behind schedule. What do you want to do? Are you fine with that? Are you going to have to rent something for another week? Is that going to cost you more money? Is that an absolute non-negotiable for you, that we're going to pull something out of the scope? You know what? We're not going to go paint the 3 bedrooms upstairs. We're going to pull that. We're going to get you into your house, and you can do that next year. Or you can do that 6 months from now once you're back into the house. Those are the options that you should be presenting to customers. If you want to remain on schedule and on budget, it's doable, but it may either cost you more money. Hey, you know what? You want to do the entire scope? It's going to cost more than that, because we're going to have to make up a week worth of time. So we're going to have to bring in a paint crew that's twice as much. Or you know what? The paint crew is going to have to work 2 weekends in a row. And this is the cost of that. It's going to be another $6,000. Are you fine with now being 13.5 over budget and finishing on time? Would you rather pull that from the scope and come down and say, hey, we're going to nail our original budget, but we're not going to complete our original scope? What is your priority? What is your program? What's the most important to you? I invoice every 2 weeks. So I address these concerns every 2 weeks. I look at what our original schedule is, where we stand, what the dates are, what our original budget is, where we stand, what the financial burden of all of this is, and then I present those choices to customers. Is this perfect? Do I do this every 2 weeks? Is it as great as it sounds in this podcast? No, but it's not 4 weeks. It's not 6 weeks. It's not 8 weeks. It's not, hey, I'm just going to keep moving through this project because I'm behind schedule and I'm underwater right now and upside down and I can't get the labor, and I'm just going to lose money and bleed money. And I'm going to be taking it from both ends because I'm losing money. I'm putting more labor in place. I'm paying more money. I'm also behind schedule, and I didn't account for this, and I didn't communicate this to anyone. So now the customers and designers and nobody's happy because school started and the kids are living at their in-laws, or we're having to extend our rental and pay more money, right? It's like, hey, if we have to stay in a rental for another month, that's going to cost us $8,000. I'd rather get in and put that $8,000 towards bringing more crews in, or paying them a higher labor rate to work weekends to get us in on time, because at the end of the day, it's a wash as far as money goes. but I get to live in my house and not be out of our house, and the kids can start the school year in their own bedrooms and in their own home. These are the conversations that need to be had. It's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be exactly the way that you planned and accounted for. You might finish on budget. You might finish on schedule. You might finish on budget and schedule, but maybe the scope of work that got completed is not what you intended. If you finish on budget, on schedule, and fulfill the scope, you are God, in my opinion, because that is so difficult to do, and you probably just lucked out. I want to see you do it next job too. Remodeling work is just not that way. You don't know something that you did last week, something that you did yesterday. You might run into something tomorrow that was unanticipated that you can never account for, even if you do the same thing every day. It's the law of averages. You're trying to create a bunch of averages that cancel each other out and work out to be an ideal scenario at the end of the day, but it's just the law of averages. It's just these wags and these swags, and it comes down to communication and management and program. What are the priorities of the designer, of the architect, of your customers, of your subcontractors, of everyone involved with the project? And if you take a 6-month project and you break it into 2-week increments, that's 4 weeks, 24 weeks, you have 12, 11 or 12, I guess, because maybe the first week is not like a management week, but you have 11 to 12 opportunities to gauge where this project stands and then alter the trajectory of this project, whether it's bringing in additional labor, whether it's reducing scope, whether it's making changes to design, whether it's increasing budget, or whether it's adding time to the schedule. You have 11 to 12 opportunities to address that with everyone involved with this project. And it usually should be done in advance, right? So when I'm looking at something and I'm saying, okay, we're 2 weeks behind schedule. That's not for the 2 week. Then I can't do anything about the people starting on Monday, but I can do something about the people starting 4 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, maybe even 2 weeks from now if my subs have that much flexibility, right? So that's what we're doing. It's giving us these opportunities to address the scope of work, where the project stands, what the budget looks like, what the schedule looks like, and what is the program of our customers, and managing that. That's what a good manager does. That's what a good project manager does. That's what a good GC does. You're not good at seeing into the future. We aren't good. We aren't psychics. We are making educated guesses as to how things are going to be, and it's up to us to manage how accurately we have assessed what we thought was going to be with what is actually happening, and then providing suggestions or options as to how to move forward with regard to schedule, budget, program, design, all of that. So that's how I address my schedules. Again, there's customers that just want a date that they're going to get in. They don't care what it takes, but just ensure that if that is their program, that's their biggest priority. That's not what I sell. And I don't know if I would sign a job that wants that, because that puts a lot of pressure on me. That puts a lot of pressure on my subs. I don't care if I make more money. If I can't sleep for 6 months and my stomach's in my throat, it's not worth it to me. So there are customers that want that, and that's perfectly fine. But ensure that you are covering your ass when it comes to that. Ensure that contractually, legally, and financially, you are covering your ass, because that's going to cost you a lot of money, especially in today's day and age, to maintain a schedule like that and guarantee a closeout date. I would rather have this conversation with customers out up front, have clauses within my contract that account for these changes or inefficiencies or downtime, have a contractual start date and end date, but then constantly assess where you stand every 2 weeks on a project, and then involve your customers, involve the designers, involve the architect, involve everyone, your subs, and hey, What do the next 2 weeks look like? What's the next month looks like? What's our budget look like? How's this going to impact our budget? How's this going to impact our schedule? And let them drive the car. Let them make the decision. If they're fine with spending 2 times the budget to close out the job, let them drive to make that decision. If they're fine with being 4 weeks behind schedule, but not increasing the budget by bringing in extra work, or, if they don't want to reduce scope and they're fine with spending more money to get the work done and being out of their house a little longer, lay it out on the table and let them be the driver in that decision making process. That's what's really important for me. So I've explained to you how I create, how I establish these schedules, and it's not perfect. It never is. But the important thing is to communicate that with customers and explain to them that you're making this up, and explain to them that this is based on a best case scenario, or you've accounted for some inefficiencies, but you can't tell what weather's going to be like. You can't tell, how many guys your sub will have, how many jobs they'll have at that time. So it's all assumptions. We're going to do our best to get there. We'll be able to make decisions and account for all of these um, constraints and all of these um, issues and considerations every 2 weeks. And we'll be able to get our heads together and make a decision as to how to move forward. So by the end of the project, you get what you want. You either get the timeline, you get the budget, you get the scope of work. You get to get what you want and you make the decision. I just afford you an opportunity to make that decision and have an idea of what the implications are with regard to schedule and budget while doing so. And in my opinion, that's the way to do it. It absolves you of the financial risk, the financial burden, the emotional, mental burden of trying to maintain a schedule, because that's what you contractually signed up for. You don't have to bear the cost of bringing in more labor to get out. You don't have to eat the cost because you already left labor on the table in the first place. This is the best case scenario for me. Again, there's people who work for customers who just want it done when they want it done, and that's just I personally wouldn't want to do that. My goal is to end on schedule and end on budget, but a lot of times it doesn't happen. But I'm I can make that happen, but it may not be with respect to the original scope that we agreed on. But I will give you all the information that I have to make an educated decision as to how you want to proceed. Um, for me, that's the way to do it. And if you have questions about this and you want to talk about this more in depth, obviously reach out to me. Shoot me an email. It's tyler@trghomeconcepts.com. I'm still doing limited availability consulting calls on Tuesdays. Usually have time for 1 to 2 calls each Tuesday. Usually book about 2 weeks out in advance. I don't like to put too much more on my plate. Again, it just puts a lot of pressure on me that I would rather not do. It's not necessarily about making the money as much as being able to help people out. And if by helping people out, it's just creating more angst for me, then it doesn't make that much sense. So I don't like to book out much further than that in advance. So it's first come, first serve basis, roughly 1 to 2 weeks in advance. If you reach out to me via email, I can explain my rates, how to schedule, how to go about all of that. But it's tyler@trghomeconcepts.com. One other thing here before I wrap it up and get on to my day. On my current job, we installed a bunch of Andersen 400 series windows. I recently made the switch to using Andersen products. They've been a great partner for me. The whole team over there has been great. The backing, the product support, the availability, the timeline, everything works for me. The budget works for me. It works for my customers. The product, the people over there are amazing. Um, The same goes for Kuiken Brothers. And if you want to check them out, I believe it's a Dutch company. The name Kuiken is Dutch, um, but it's Kuiken Brothers.com. Check them out. So where this is going is I can distinctly remember probably 8 years ago now. I can't remember the date, but I remember having a conversation. I was sitting on the back of my truck out in front of my shop speaking with Nick about how I wanted to be using Kuiken Brothers Classical Mouldings on all of my projects. I wanted that to be a standard, and I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to account for that and sell that on a project. And he's like, dude, just do it. Like, don't offer anything else. And it was pretty much as simple as that. But as always in my my standard operating procedure, I have to sell it and I have to justify it and I have to figure out like what is the value add there for customers. Um, so I have been using their moldings roughly for 8 years. Um, I love them. They're finger jointed poplar. Um, the stability of them, the weight of them, the robustness of their moldings compared to stock moldings, I had forgotten about. So on our project now, we have these beautiful Andersen 400 series windows, and I'm trimming them out in stock profiles, and they're pine moldings. Even the baseboard is just like a 7 1/4 speed base that's one piece, and I haven't installed something like this in so long, and it's like max half inch deep. It's all one piece. The the profiles on it are so rounded and muted and bland that I'm like wrapping all of these beautiful windows and these doors and these nice spaces with great finishes in these moldings. And I'm like, this is such a bummer. We're matching existing moldings and doors throughout the house. But I'm like, this is the first job in so long that I haven't had the opportunity to upgrade the package to these Kuiken Brothers moldings. And it's such a bummer. And it really has highlighted the difference between what they sell and what's out there on the market. And if you don't know, stop in one of the locations, get some samples made. And I understand they're a partner of mine, but it's night and day difference. Like, I'm not just selling this, it's night and day difference. Their moldings are absolutely beautiful. If you grab a 4 5/8 crown, pine finger jointed crown, and then grab Kuiken Brothers finger jointed poplar equivalent of it and put them side by side. Weight wise, the Kuiken Brother one's heavier, and from a profile and historic accuracy, it's night and day. Like, especially once they're painted, throw some semi-gloss on there and see the shadow lines and the profiles and how crisp and what they're able to do by milling poplar versus MDF or pine. It's night and day. Just a much nicer product. They're so much more stable. They don't expand and contract with the changing of seasons as much as the pine. In my old house, I battled that for years. These things expanding and contracting and like trying to recalk stuff every winter in an old house. It's just drafty and it's not that stable. And the difference between the pine and the poplar is huge. It's just a more robust molding. It's much heavier. And then again, the deep cuts and the reliefs and the shadow lines of them. I'm super bummed that we are not wrapping our Andersen windows and doors in them on this project, but it has given me such a greater appreciation for the projects that I am able to use them on. So what I would recommend doing is if you go on their website, and I could tell you the link to type in, but honestly, the easiest way to do it is go to kuikenbrothers.com. Up top, there's a product tab, and then open up that product tab and hit molding. Once you hit molding, you can go down. There's a yellow book that says full line molding. Download the full line molding catalog or request a printed catalog. request a printed catalog. I have a few of them at my house. You can bring them to jobs. It has line drawings. It also has renderings of the product. You can show them to customers. You can sell it that way. You can go through if you're doing a takeoff and you have every single model number that you need, every code that you need to order these moldings. That's the best way to go about doing this. They'll send you a molding catalog for free. But check them out. They do ship nationwide. If you need moldings, check them out. It's their classical molding line. Also, if you need Andersen windows or doors, they are a huge supplier of Andersen windows and doors. So check them out for that. All right, that's it for me. I'm wrapping this one up. Really excited about this episode. I hope you guys enjoy it. If you have questions, if you want to hop on a call, Tyler at trghomeconcepts.com. We'll have a conversation about what the cost is for that, when I can get you scheduled, and move forward from there. But I appreciate all the support as always. Make sure that you patronize those partners that we have, and I will catch you all next week. Go Phils!